Hey, Letoyia, good to see you.
Hey, Chips. How are you, my friend?
This is fun. It's a good opportunity to discuss employment risks that are on the horizon from a cross-Atlantic perspective.
Looking forward to it.
Well, look, questions often asked, what are the employee risks that we're seeing or what's on the horizon? And for me, put simply, if your business has employees, then you have employment liability risk. Allegations of discrimination, harassment, bullying, things can escalate quickly, and with this, so can the cost of dealing with such allegations. Following movements such as #MeToo, there's a real shift in focus as to what's acceptable and what's not. Are you seeing that as well?
Chips, I couldn't agree with you more. That's why for the fourth year in a row, 23% of global executives surveyed, employer risk is at the top of their boardroom risk. And then another 24% of global business leaders feel unprepared for those risks, and posed by, for instance, failing to support staff or facilitate safe operating conditions. And understandably so. Here in the U.S., we've seen significant changes in the employment space post-COVID, beginning with things like social inflation and nuclear verdicts. Even recently, there was a Washington jury came back in a single plaintiff case with a verdict of over $239 million, $39 million emotional distress, another $198 million in punitive damages. It's just astronomical.
That's social inflation, but economic inflation as well? Any impact on that?
Economic inflation has increased as well. We see increase in defense costs. We've seen increase in the plaintiff's contingency fee arrangements. And notably, emotional distress, defense costs, plaintiff's attorney's fees, these are all things that are covered by the employment practice liability policy, generally speaking.
We're now looking at the return to work, and I'm guessing that's as much of an issue, for want of a better word, that we're seeing over here as well.
Absolutely. Employers are wrestling with return to work and the myriad of issues that arise from that. Remote working, requests for accommodations. It's quite a hornet's nest over here, Chip. How about across the Atlantic?
Yeah, it's similar here, Letoyia. We're seeing new forms of discrimination emerging. Those relating to remote working could lead to claims for being overlooked, for promotions, or not having the needs met as a working parent. And I think a big concern for employers is the refusal to allow hybrid working could result in indirect discrimination claims. Could see sex discrimination claims if it has a disproportionate effect on one sex. Disability discrimination if the requirement to be at work disadvantages a disabled employee. It goes without saying these allegations are completely defendable if the reason to refuse remote working is objectively justified on a business grounds. But employers really need to be careful. They need to carefully balance alongside their procedures on the discriminatory impact it might have on their employees. I think there's this perception that the UK seems to be lagging behind the US in terms of claims environment, which is probably true to an extent, but I think there is this expectation that EPL cover will become more prevalent and necessary with the introduction of new employee rights and policies proposed by the new government in the UK. But that's not to say we're not seeing the seven-figure sums and claims in the UK that I think you're probably more accustomed to seeing on your side. But I think what's important to also stress is that these seven-figure sums, they don't actually include defence costs that would have amassed over the period of time throughout the time of the claim. Now, employment tribunals in the UK are overloaded at the moment, and protracted litigation will see an increase in defence spend, some matters taking over 2 years to get to the tribunal door. Now, it's just something to be mindful of, coupled with the seven-figure sums, are the element of defence costs that can be incurred by our insureds.
Oh, Chips. The issues of protracted litigation and high defense costs have been thorns in the U.S. litigation space for years, my friend.
I bet. So I think it really stresses that, firms need to build resilience and do the right thing for their employees. Now, there's a great importance on employers getting ahead of new regulations and the need to get appropriate and good legal advice about the new employee rights, about flexible working, about hybrid working, all these new directives coming into play, ESG and other regulations, and they need to start reviewing their policies and procedures.
Oh, absolutely. The other thing that I would mention here too, Chips, in terms of firms really protecting themselves, is, just as it's important for firms to vet the AI practices, they should also conduct a risk analysis and make DEI initiatives, diagnose existing policies, hiring and promotion practices and communications. Do they focus on a protected characteristic alone? It's really important.
Absolutely. And I think if companies find themselves on the wrong sides of claims, they're likely to be able to present a stronger defense if they can demonstrate they have the appropriate policies in place and they've attempted to adhere to these and are considering a broad spectrum of EPL risks.
Chips, good policies and procedures and consistent implementation of those policies, foundation of a strong defense. In this environment, we strive for partnership with our brokers and insurers. And not just when a claim arises, our policies include free pre-claim advice. We help with employee handbook, unlimited HR advice when something arises. And this often helps mitigate a claim should one arise.
Great. Good to chat, Letoyia.
Yeah, same here, Chip.